begin instead tonight with the fear that the situation in Ukraine is perhaps approaching civil war. Russian troops have been arriving by transport plane and by helicopter in the Crimea region, many of them with their faces covered, wearing no insignia. If not an invasion, it certainly appears to be a Russian military intervention in a neighboring country and a former part of the Soviet Union. NBC's Bill Neely has been watching it happen today. He is in the Ukrainian city of Simferopol. Bill, good evening.
Good evening, Brian. There is a Russian war memorial behind me. Russia's Black Sea Fleet has been based here in Crimea for 250 years. But none of this explains what Russia has been up to today. There is no question Russian armor and men have been on the move here today and maybe on the move tonight. A form of intervention? Well, Russia is admitting as much. It began in the dead of night. Unknown gunmen surrounding the main airport in Crimea. By day, it was clear they were pro-Russian and against any repeat here of Ukraine's revolution. After the surprise on land came the shock in the air. Russian helicopters, some gunships, flying over Crimea in what Ukraine said was a violation of its airspace. Next, the sea, a Russian warship blockading Ukrainian Coast Guard vessels from leaving port. Russia admits its armor and troops are on the move. These men blocking the main military airport, where tonight hundreds more Russians flew in. Ukraine says 2,000. Russia says it's for security. But whose security? And is that really all? Along Ukraine's borders, Russia drilled its troops, tens of thousands of them. Russian jets flying near Crimea. The message to Ukraine's new leaders, loud and clear. Ukraine's old leader was in Russia, Viktor Yanukovych, defiant, blaming the West for the revolution, provocative, saying Russia can't be a bystander. Pro-Russians were standing guard outside Crimea's parliament. Russia's flag above it, barricades around it. 3 out of 4 people in Crimea speak Russian, feel Russian, and resent the West. They're nothing but fascists, this man says, helped and trained by Americans. The protests here are continuing into the night. There is no need for Russia to stoke pro-Moscow loyalty. This place is full of it. Passions were stoked when a businessman who backed the revolution dared to appear among them. A mob chased him, yelling Russia and Putin, until he was lucky enough to escape. Crimea, an historic flashpoint, is once again tonight a volatile region. Well, the main airport here in Crimea is closed tonight, and Russian planes have been seen arriving. Echoes of the invasion of Georgia 6 years ago, echoes too of the Cold War. The East-West rivalry here, inside and outside Ukraine, is deepening.
Dicey situation. Bill Neely live for us tonight from Ukraine. Bill, thanks. Also a dicey situation watching all of this at the White House. We mentioned the president spoke on the issue earlier today. Tonight, our chief White House correspondent, political director Chuck Todd, is with us from the North Lawn. Chuck, what are the options there?
Well, they're not saying a lot about the options just yet. As you know, after days of what apparently was failed behind-the-scenes diplomacy to convince the Russians to back off on this saber-rattling in Ukraine, the president decided to go public with a direct warning to Vladimir Putin that there will be consequences if the reports of a Russian-led military incursion in Ukraine are true. Take a listen to what he said.
And just days after the world came to Russia for the Olympic Games, it would invite the condemnation of nations around the world. And indeed, the United States will stand with the international community in affirming that there will be costs for any military intervention in Ukraine.
Of course, just what those costs would be was left undefined by the president, and that was on purpose, though an aide just told me that the United States and its European allies are considering a boycott of the G8 economic meeting that Russia is scheduled to host later this year in Sochi. Now, the entire Obama diplomatic team has taken pains this week, Brian, to emphasize this is not the Cold War, this is not a dispute between the United States and Russia, But privately aides are acknowledging that this is becoming more difficult given Putin's desire not to lose influence in Ukraine. For now, the hope here at the White House, Brian, is that Putin will interpret the president's statement today as enough of a threat that he will back down. We'll see.